Time for a question of the day. So what do you think of Donald Trump's nickname for Hillary Clinton? Just go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, at Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Don't forget, tomorrow, New York primary night, our regular time, 10 Eastern. We'll be broadcasting live from Trump Tower. We'll have the latest on the New York primary results. That's all coming up tomorrow. Regular time, 10 Eastern. That's all the time we have for this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. Have a great night. Welcome to Hannity, and tonight the 2016 race for the White House enters a new phase after frontrunners Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both scored huge victories in their home state of New York. And standing by tonight at the Hannity Big Board with more information, Fox and Friends, Heather Nauert. Heather.
Hi there, Sean. A very good night for Donald Trump in the Empire State. 95 important delegates at stake. Trump added nearly all of them to his war chest as he presses ahead to try to reach that magic number of 1,237 delegates needed to secure that nomination. Trump happy with the results from last night, of course, but he says there is still work to be done and was back on the campaign trail earlier tonight. Take a look here.
Look, hey, folks, to a large extent, we have to build the military. We have to do so many different things. We'll go over them. We're going to build our military so strong, so powerful, nobody is going to mess with us, right? Nobody. No, it's a very important thing. We have to go out. We have to win. We have to win to make our country great again. We're going to make our country great again. Going to make our country great again. Yeah, okay. We'll build the wall. But who's going to pay for the wall? Who? Absolutely right. You got it right, folks. You got it right.
So as for Trump's top rival, Senator Ted Cruz, he had a tough time in New York, making his road to the nomination a whole lot harder, but he is not backing down in his battle with Donald Trump. Earlier today, Senator Cruz predicted that there will be a contested convention in Cleveland. Take a listen to this.
What is clear today is that we are headed to a contested convention. Nobody is able to reach 1237. I'm not going to reach 1237, and Donald Trump is not going to reach 1237.
Well, there you go. Then on the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton easily winning her home state, and her campaign is now saying that Senator Bernie Sanders mathematically has no chance to defeat her for the nomination. Sean, Tuesday, the candidates, both parties facing off in Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. A combined 118 delegates on the line for the Republicans, 384 delegates in play for the Democrats. So we will be keeping a close eye on those races, as you know. Sean.
All right, coming down to the wire. Thanks,
yeah,
Heather.
certainly. Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. Now, joining us now, the author of The Greatest Comeback, Patrick J. Buchanan, is with us. Sir, how are you?
Doing fine, Sean.
All right, you have a column. The headline, not sure if you wrote the headline, is the GOP risking suicide? You say Donald Trump has brought out the largest crowds in the history of primaries. He's won the most victories, the most delegates, the most votes. He's poised to sweep 3 of the 5 largest states in the country, New York, Pennsylvania, California. If he does and the nomination is taken away from him, the Republican Party will be seen by the American people as
the Chinese tongue.
Explain.
What I'm saying is, look, as I mentioned, Donald Trump has got millions and millions more votes than any other Republican candidate. He's won all these primaries. His victories have been massive. His crowds have been enormous. We see him almost every week, winning a race, and sometimes he maybe loses 1 or 2. Sean, the things perceived as real are real in their consequences. The American people are looking at this and they say, whether we like Donald Trump or not, the guy went out and he has won this thing. Now, if by poaching and pilfering delegates here and there, Cruz and Kasich can hold Trump off from the nomination on the first ballot, and then they take it, it'll be like the heavyweight champ standing there with his gloves over his head and the award going to the guy lying on the canvas.
Yeah. What do you say to the argument? Well, everyone knew the rules going in ahead of time, sure, and Donald Trump should have competed better in Colorado, et cetera. What's your answer?
My answer is there's no doubt about it. Ted Cruz knows the rules better than Donald Trump. Ted Cruz has a better ground game than Donald Trump. Ted Cruz is not doing anything criminal and pilfering delegates and telling them to hold out and all the rest of it. But what I'm saying is the American people have perceived a tremendously exciting, interested contest, and the reality is that Donald Trump won it, and everybody knows it. Look at that TV last night, Sean. Are people going to turn around and say, now they're going to give it to the guy who was runner-up by 300 delegates? Why?
All right. James Baker had an interesting line. He said, try and acquire as many delegates as possible, protect them, and steal as many as you possibly can. And I guess that's the way the system is designed to work. Let me go back, because we're now at the point mathematically that there's only one candidate that can get to 1237 without a contested convention. That is Donald Trump. Here's Ted Cruz when John Kasich when he got to the point mathematically he couldn't get to 1237. Here's what he said.
John Kasich is a good man. He's an honorable man. But he has no path to the nomination. It's mathematically impossible for John Kasich to become the Republican nominee. He needs more than 100% of the remaining delegates. And it's worth remembering, Kasich went 0 for 27, lost 27 states in a row. Then he won his home state. You can't lose every state and expect to be the nominee. Right now, Kasich's role is really being a spoiler.
Does that come back to hurt Ted Cruz now that mathematically he can't get to 1237 until he goes to a contested convention?
Sure it does. Sure it does. He can't win the nomination and get the delegates now on the first ballot, and Donald Trump still can. So his campaign is all about holding off and playing dog in the manger and taking delegates away to deny Trump the victory he has won over Cruz, over Kasich, over 15 other Republicans. Deny it to him and hope working in the back rooms they can get delegates who don't like Trump to break from him, faithless delegates, and win a nomination that way. Sean, we've been in a political era since Jack Kennedy swept the Democratic primaries, Nixon swept the Republican primaries in '68, McGovern had a great campaign and took the Democratic Party. The idea that we're going to backroom politics like the 19th century and confer the nomination on somebody who is a clear loser, it's not going to go with the American people. It looks like it's a contradiction of democracy.
What about comments, John Boehner, for example? Oh, anybody can be nominated on the convention floor, or the comments yesterday of Mitch McConnell, or the comments of Mitt Romney, or the comments of Karl Rove about a fresh face. Clearly, there seems to be a strategy emerging behind closed doors about the white knight candidate that's going to come in, somebody who didn't even run in this primary, which would render everybody's vote, everybody's caucus time irrelevant,
Sean,
and they would be disenfranchised.
You mean Rove talks about a fresh face? We have watched this process for a full year almost. We've watched it every week. It has been terrific. We've seen millions and millions of people come out. And the Republican Party, Rove, and all the guys on Capitol Hill, the hated establishment, are going to get up and tell us, hey, folks, that all was just advisory. We're going to decide on the nominee when we get to the convention in the back rooms and who we think will best represent this small party of ours. I think, again, Sean, the Republican Party in the Reagan era was America's party. That would be the end of America's party, all the hopes to become that again.
There's a contentious battle, especially on social media. If you're a Cruz supporter, if you're a Trump supporter, you can read it. It's intense. Here's the question. I believe if the party doesn't unite behind the winner, and that means all of the 17 that originally began here, and the rest of the party, and the establishment, and I think some establishment might want to see Hillary win so they can say to the voters, oh, see, we told you so. You should have gone with our establishment candidate. But the question is, do you see them uniting in the end, knowing that if they don't, Hillary Clinton is the next president?
I think any Republican a major figure in the Republican Party who walks away if Trump is the nominee and says, I'm not endorsing him and I really don't care if he loses, is going to be just like those folks in '64, Rockefeller and Romney and Scranton and all the rest. And after that, they were ancient history, Sean. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan went all out for Goldwater when he was 50 points behind. Nixon traveled to more states, I think, than Goldwater did. They fought for the party, and when the party went down to defeat, they were right there standing with their guy. The future belonged to them because of that, and it didn't belong to the guys who walked away and went over the hill.
All right, Pat Buchanan, always great to have you. Thank you. And coming
Good talking to you, Sean.
Senator Ted Cruz was a guest on my radio show yesterday. It got a little heated. He got defensive when I asked him about the delegate process. We're going to play that interview, and then later tonight.
We have several ways to get to 1237 by early June.
Nobody is able to reach 1237.
Donald Trump's convention manager says that his candidate will win the nomination on the first ballot in Cleveland, but Cruz says otherwise. Our delegate experts break down the numbers, plus tonight.
What's the one word you would use to describe Hillary Clinton?
Treacherous.
In a Hannity exclusive, you're going to love this, we sent David Webb to ask Bernie Sanders supporters to describe Hillary Clinton in one word. Their answers are devastating for the Democratic frontrunner. That and more tonight on Hannity. And welcome back to Hannity. Now, yesterday, I had 2016 presidential candidate Senator Ted Cruz on my radio program, and I asked him about the delegate process. Now, since Cruz says we're headed to a contested convention in Cleveland, I think it's an important question. Well, things got a little heated when I asked him about it. Here's part of that interview.
I am telling you that people are telling me that they find this whole process confusing. You know, I can read the articles, for example, about, you know, what people want to know what actually happened in Georgia this weekend, where people that I guess on the first ballot are going to Donald Trump, but representatives of yours talk to them and are persuading them to vote for you on a second ballot. That is an important question because I think most people would like to know how this works. And I really am asking you, it's more than a process question. It's an integrity of the election question. And everybody's asking me this question. So I'm giving you an opportunity to explain it.
Sean, the only people asking this question are the hardcore Donald Trump supporters.
Why do you do this every single time no, you got to stop. Every time I have you on the air and I ask a legitimate question, you try to throw this in my face. I'm getting sick of it. I've had you on more than any other candidate on radio and TV. So if I ask you, Senator, a legitimate question to explain to the audience, why don't you just answer it?
Sean, can I answer your question without being interrupted?
Go ahead.
In the last 3 weeks, there have been 5 elections in 5 states: Utah, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Colorado, Wyoming. We've won all 5. Over 1.3 million people voted in those 5 states. We won all 5. All of this noise and complaining and whining has come from the Trump campaign because they don't like the fact that they've lost 5 elections in a row, that Republicans are uniting behind our campaign, so they're screaming on Drudge, and it's getting echoed, this notion of voterless election. It is nonsense. They are making it up.
What if the delegate selection doesn't represent the will of the people in that particular district or area?
Sean, that's why there's an election. And listen.
No, I mean, but if there's a conflict, that's why Senator, I don't know why you're mad. There's no, I'm asking, I'm just trying to understand it. I'm really having a hard time understanding why you're getting angry at this.
All right, joining us now with Reaction Radio talk show host Rose Tennant and author David Limbaugh, who also happens to be my attorney, but also is a Cruz supporter. David, this has now happened in the last 3 interviews that I've had with Senator Cruz. I feel like I've been more than fair to him. If you have legitimate criticism, as a friend, I'm willing to listen to it. I think it's a very important question. I don't think people understand it. I listen to, people that write me and people that text me and people on Twitter. What do you think?
Well, Sean, you're one of my best friends, and I am completely supportive of Ted Cruz. I don't think he was really mad, and I think it's more of a misunderstanding. If he was aggravated, it's not at you, it's at Donald Trump for recklessly misrepresenting that stealing and cheating is going on. This system has been in place for 150 years or more. In the states, we have a hybrid of pure democracy, we have caucuses, we have primaries, And there has been no stealing going on. No one's ever complained about this before. And I think Lisa Booth was correct when she said this is messaging. This is an Alinskyite tactic Trump is using to get Cruz off message. And his frustration, if he had any, was not at you, but that since Iowa, Trump has been accusing him of being lying Ted, and he won't talk about the real issues. Cruz wants to get him in a debate where he can whip him fairly and squarely. He's going to these precincts and caucuses and courting these people and convincing them. But Trump accusing Cruz of cheating is also accusing the grassroots people, saying that party bosses have stolen this thing. These are grassroots people who have walked these precincts and worked hard all their life for conservative principles. And for Trump to say there's cheating going on, he's impugning them and he's undermining the election process.
Rose, let's get your take on it.
Hi, Sean. I thought you did a great job during that interview. I found him to be somewhat condescending, not only towards you, but to the voters who really don't understand what's going on. And for many of us, Pennsylvania especially, we've never really had to experience this, not for a very long time. So this is a very complicated process, and we don't understand that once we've gone through a primary or a caucus, that things can actually change. When we spoke our mind, we voted, and then we find out only later that those things can be changed. And I think that's what frustrates a lot of people, and my listeners are especially concerned. And I've had listeners call me and tell me that they were Cruz supporters, but right now they're confused by all of this, and it reads as something that's not quite right. Even though we know it's legal, everything that's been done by Ted Cruz in his campaign is legal, they're not feeling right about it. Yeah. They don't feel good about it. And I think that's important. And I love David. But I'll tell you what, there are grassroots volunteers on the other side, on Trump's side, working for him tirelessly, putting in so much time, enthusiasm, and passion into this campaign, and they're feeling as though the primaries don't matter.
David, I'm sympathetic to the idea that everybody knew the rules going in. Going forward, meaning not in this election cycle, I would like to see, it's a national party, the party represents the people. I think that states should have choices. They should either be a caucus state or primary state. They can be proportional distribution of delegates or winner take all. And I think every delegate needs to be unbound. Rose is talking about Pennsylvania. The winner of Pennsylvania gets 17 delegates, 54 are unbound, and you actually have names of delegates not representing the candidates. In other words, they don't have the name of the delegate and the candidate they're supporting. So I think there can be improvements to the system going forward because it is confusing. I don't see any problem courting delegates for a second ballot. If you think it's going to go to a contested convention, that's fine. But I think having it explained by the candidates what their strategy is a legitimate question.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I wish he would have answered it directly and blown it out of the water. But because these rules have been in place, and Trump knows it, and this is disingenuous for him to do it. You're correct. If we want to change these rules, we have to go obey the process in doing that too. Obey the rules, do it in a timely way, do it in a way that's way before the election, the primary process begins, not after the fact, after you've lost these elections because you've been outgunned, outprepared, outmaneuvered, and outworked by Ted Cruz. And so I just don't think it's right for Trump to raise these issues. It's a fine, legitimate question for you to ask, but states and the party have a right to do what they want to do, and we don't want it forced down their throats, but there ought to be what about the fact that 60% of the people voted for Trump last night, and he'll get 90% of the delegates? It's not a pure democracy any way you do it. And so and Trump has far more delegates, a far higher percentage of delegates than his percentage of popular vote. Right. Part of the reason we have this convention thing is that people want to marshal a majority coalition which can go against the Democrats and defeat them. If Trump is unable to convince a majority of unbound delegates, should it go to a second or third ballot, then there's no way he could have beaten Hillary Clinton.
Rose, last word, quick.
Well, I just think that people are looking right now as a vote for Cruz as a vote for a contested convention. And most people really don't want that, and I don't think it's a good idea. And I think that for Pennsylvanians, they better know who they're going in to vote for, not just for president, but delegates as well. They got to get a commitment from those delegates going into the booth.
Actually, in the next 2 days, I'm putting up on my website who the delegates are supporting. So this way people in Pennsylvania will know. I think that's just fair for them. Guys, I love you both. Thank you both for being with us. Appreciate it.
We love you too.
All right, coming up, are we headed to a contested convention, or can Donald Trump get the number of delegates needed to clinch the nomination? We have delegate experts weighing in. Also, if you're courting a delegate, what are you allowed to offer them? Then later tonight.
I don't want to use the word crook, but
When I was born, I grew up doing
untruthful.
A Hannity exclusive you don't want to miss. We asked Bernie Sanders supporters to sum up Hillary Clinton in one word. Wait until you hear the rest of what they said. Now, the Clinton campaign should be very concerned. I'll give you that tip as Hannity continues. And welcome back to Hannity. The RNC spring meeting started today down in Hollywood, Florida, and one of the most crucial topics up for discussion is the possibility of a contested convention come July. But last night, right here on this program, Trump's convention manager, Paul Manafort, he predicted the issue will not be an issue. Take a look.
There's not going to be a second ballot, so there's not an issue.
And you're convinced?
We have several ways to get to 1237 by early June.
And earlier today, the Washington Post reported that an internal memo is projecting that Donald Trump will have more than 1,400 delegates and will easily win the nomination on the first ballot at the GOP convention. Now, Senator Ted Cruz, on the other hand, he's telling an entirely different story. Take a look at him.
What is clear today is that we are headed to a contested convention. Nobody is able to reach 1237. I'm not going to reach 1237, and Donald Trump is not going to reach 1237. We're going to arrive in Cleveland with me having a ton of delegates and with Donald having a ton of delegates. And at that point, it is going to be a battle to see who can earn the support of a majority of the delegates elected by the people.
Joining us now with reaction, the founder and president of High Noon Strategies, Lisa Booth, and the leader of Clark Hill's National Political Law Practice, Charles Spee, is with us. Lisa, let me start with you, because mathematically, there's only one guy left that now has a chance to get to 1237. If you look at the percentages, it seems within the realm of possibility, about a little less than 60% for Donald Trump to get the nomination, to get to 1237 before we get to the convention. Thoughts?
Well, you're right, Sean, and we're seeing a lot of campaign spin from both campaigns. I don't think Donald Trump can get to 1,400, but he can get to 1,237. You're right. He's the only candidate right now that's poised to reach that number. And look, we both know that this is about delegates, but it's also about optics. It's also about momentum. Donald Trump came off of a bad couple of weeks there where Senator Ted Cruz won Wisconsin, Colorado, and Wyoming. However, he had a huge win in New York last night. He got 60% of the vote. He shored up almost all of the 95 delegates that were on the table. He also heads into next week on the 26th, where there's Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, all states that he is poised to do very well in. So Donald Trump needs to carry that momentum into May, and we'll see what happens. But there is definitely the opportunity for him to become the presumptive nominee, with the pledged delegates and/or pick up enough unbound delegates to win on that first ballot.
Charles, let's talk about Pennsylvania. The winner of the state of Pennsylvania, Trump is up by about 20 points in the state, according to the Real Clear Politics average. But only 17 of those delegates are bound. Another 54 delegates are unbound. On the ballot itself, they have delegate names, but they don't have who the delegates are going to represent if elected. So it gets very confusing. How does that work out?
Well, this whole process is a combination of doing well at the polls, like Donald Trump did last night in New York, and doing well at the actual delegate selection process. And that's where Ted Cruz has really mastered the process and done better in Wyoming. And even if you look at the more recent states like Michigan, he did very well. And that's why the Cruz folks are really looking at a second ballot as the opportunity for some of those delegates to become unbound and switch over to him.
Yeah. In the course of courting, for example, let's say candidate A has on the first ballot, they have committed delegates. But if candidate B and C are courting those delegates for the second round of balloting, what are they allowed to offer those delegates? Anything? Can they pay for their plane tickets? Can they pay for their hotel rooms? Can they take them out to expensive steak dinners? What are they allowed to do by law?
That's a great question, and it matters if those delegates hold any sort of public office, in which case, if you're giving them a trip to Mar-a-Lago, you might be seeing the FBI outside your door.
Yeah.
But if they're just regular citizens that are serving as delegates, there's very few rules that govern what you can do. You certainly can court them.
When you say, but court them and pay for their plane ticket, their hotel room, and take them to a steak dinner, that seems like a little more than courting. That seems like quid pro quo.
It means that you've got to be very careful about the optics, but what governs here are party rules, and the party rules don't prohibit you from courting them or even giving them a plane ticket.
Can you buy them a car?
I wouldn't recommend doing it because I think it would be a terrible story.
But you can spend money on them. I mean, you know, it seems you gotta. That would worry me and concern me. Lisa, let me ask this question. There was a Real Clear Politics column yesterday, and the headline was that Cruz could come in dead last in Pennsylvania and still take home more than half the delegates.
Well, it's interesting. And look, what we're seeing this election cycle, because in previous election cycles, we've had a nominee who's become the presumptive nominee at this point. Now, granted, we started out with 17 candidates, so everything about this election cycle has been unorthodox and has been a little bit different than previous election cycles in recent memory. So what we're seeing now is sort of the curtain being rolled back about the process, which is really something that, which is really something, Sean, that people just haven't been interested in because they haven't had to be interested in it. And what I think Donald Trump has done, which has been interesting, is I honestly don't think he cares as much about the process as he's letting on. I think what he's doing from a communication standpoint is some table setting, because what he has now done is created this scenario where the RNC delegates have a bullseye on their back, and people are going to be paying attention to everything that what they are doing, and what they're going to be paying attention to the convention rules and to everything to a degree that they wouldn't have been otherwise. So it's interesting to see him do this.
If it's interesting both in Wisconsin and New York and exit polls. In Wisconsin, a state that Donald Trump lost, in New York, a state that he won, 60% of Wisconsin voters, 70% of New York voters said that they think the person with the most votes, delegates, and states won should get the nomination regardless of 1237. Do you think that if the party sticks to its rules, which I assume they will, and it is a contested convention, if they do leapfrog over somebody that has more votes, delegates, and states won, what do you think the result of that is? Real quick, I'll ask you both.
Well, I think they're going to see a lot of voters that are upset if that happens. But Sean, to point out one thing, for over a century, you've had to get the 1,237 number. And so I think it's in Donald Trump's best interest, if he wants to be the nominee, is to try to focus on the states, to get the number, to get that number, and also to be looking at the unbound delegates that could potentially help him on the first ballot become the nominee.
Yeah, and Charles, there's what, about 150 or so of those?
At least, depending on how the state laws are applied by the Credentials Committee at the actual convention in terms of how people are bound. But, Sean, if you were to ask that same polling question about is the team that's ahead at the end of the 8th inning, should they be favored to win the game? Most people would say yes, but they would also say play that 9th inning, follow the rules, and finish out the game.
All right, guys, good to see you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
And coming up next tonight on this busy news night on Hannity.
What's the one word you'd use to describe Hillary Clinton?
Oh, she's a liar.
Bernie Sanders supporters, we asked them one word to describe Hillary Clinton. It's a video you will only see here on Hannity tonight. It's shocking, and also later tonight.
If this Congress and the next president do not take an action to secure this border with Mexico and enforce the immigration laws, every county in America will become a border county.
Every county in America, a border county. A Maryland sheriff sounding the alarm about border security. That and more tonight on Hannity.
It's humbling that you'd trust me with the awesome responsibilities that await our next president. And And to all the people who supported Senator Sanders, I believe there is much more that unites us than divides us.
All right, so after winning the New York Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton is trying to unify Democrats around her campaign, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. Now, in a Hannity exclusive, we sent our friend David Webb to a Bernie Sanders rally to ask his supporters the one word they would use to describe Hillary Clinton. It was not pretty. Take a look.
What's the one word you would use to describe Hillary Clinton?
Treacherous.
Hillary Clinton? She said it, opportunist.
Untrustworthy.
Scary. What's your one word to describe Hillary Clinton?
Avoidable?
I don't want to use the word crook, but when I was born, I grew up doing untruthful.
The ordinary.
What about you?
Traditional.
Disconnected.
What about you?
Establishment.
What's the one word you would use to describe Hillary Clinton?
President of the United States of America.
Dishonest.
Oh, she's a liar.
Opulence. That's the one word.
Choke. Lies.
That's two. You got one more?
Disgrace. Stale.
A fraud.
Here with reaction, Bernie Sanders campaign surrogate and adjunct professor of law at the University of Detroit, Mercy Amar-Zar is with us, and former Clinton pollster, Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. Amar, it was interesting your comments on Twitter today. You said that to assert that people, Bernie supporters, are obligated to support Hillary, you said is wildly misunderstanding this movement.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Bernie Sanders supporters and the Bernie Sanders movement is about bringing a new generation of people into the political process, new kinds of thinking. Hillary Clinton kind of represents the old way of thinking, the traditional way of thinking. That's why I think you see a lot of the reactions you saw on that Man on the Street video.
What would be the one word you'd use to describe her?
Credibility issues. Is that two words?
That's not a word. Go on, try again.
No, I mean, I think that's the main problem that a lot of us have with her is the honesty.
Do you think she's a liar?
I wouldn't go as far as to call her a liar, but
I think she's dishonest?
There are some honesty issues, and
Do you think she's untrustworthy?
Many of us do, yes.
And you're one of them?
I do think that she's untrustworthy. I mean, when we see what happened
with... You think she's crooked?
No, I wouldn't use that word.
Yeah, okay. Doug, fully 25% of Bernie supporters are saying they're not supporting her.
Right, and that's now, Sean. We're in April. Feelings are necessarily quite heightened, quite divided. But they'll come together after the convention. Frankly, it's the Republicans who are a lot more divided than the Democrats.
No, you know what? We're paying more attention to the Republicans, but in reality, there's a lot of Bernie supporters, and I bet, Amari, you're probably one of them. I look at what's happening with the Republicans, but I don't think I've ever seen anything as corrupt as this whole superdelegate system, where Hillary Clinton has, 700 some odd superdelegates, Bernie has 30? Really? That sounds to me like the establishment has stacked the deck to give Hillary the nomination. You take away the superdelegates, and this is a pretty narrow race.
Yeah, the superdelegate system is a problem.
Is it corrupt?
Well, I wouldn't call it corrupt, but it definitely is an incumbency protection system, right? Which that's
really corrupt. Come on, wait a minute. If you're saying it's there to protect one candidate over another, that means it's corrupted and it's not fair.
I'm not going to use the word corrupt, but what it does do is it sidelines a lot of the new people that are trying to come into the system.
Is it cheating?
It makes their voice...
Is it dishonest? Is it unfair?
No, I'm not going to use any of those words. It is a bit unfair.
You really believe it, don't you? You know it's unfair. I know it's unfair. I'm laughing. If I'm a Bernie supporter, I'd be pissed.
No, I'd say it's unfair because what it does is it takes away the democratic power from the people, and it really sidelines this whole new generation of people that are coming in.
That's corrupt.
It's not a great system.
If I could
it's not a great system.
Get a word in. Look, Hillary's going to be the next president. Republicans divided.
Blah, blah, blah.
Amar is rightfully
You know what? Maybe she
expressing
will.
frustration.
She starts out with 47% of the vote.
Correct.
God help us if she wins.
5 of the 6 states with like 250 of the 270 delegates, you need the electoral college.
Is that superdelegate system corrupt, yes or no?
It is effective, and it
I didn't
works.
ask if it's effective. Is it
I don't
corrupt?
think it's corrupt. It is an
Does it
incumbent.
does
I
it
agree with
protect-
Amar. It's designed to protect incumbents. You know what?
It's designed to protect
It
establishment.
works.
So basically, it's a system that screws Bernie.
Yeah, of course it does.
Okay.
That's right.
There you go, from a Hillary supporter.
And Hillary will be the
He's saying
president.
what you were afraid to say, Amar. Speak up.
Amar is
Listen,
perfectly fair and reasonable in his
No,
comments.
it's not fair.
We'll be on the
Honest
same
than
side.
he is. Amar,
Look, it's
no,
not-
Amar's an
it's
honest guy.
It's nice
Fair
to hear it from a
comments.
Hillary
We'll all be
supporter. It's
together
nice to hear it from a
beating
Hillary
Trump
supporter,
or
but
Cruz.
it's not fair
We'll be
to
working
those of us
together,
who have
Amar.
been brought.
I look forward to it.
No, well, I don't know about that.
Will
But
you vote
it's
for, last
not
question,
fair.
exit question. Will you vote for Hillary if she's the nominee, Amar?
I plead the Fifth Amendment.
I think we'll all be
That's
together.
a no. Why don't you just answer? That's a no. Say no.
Amar, you'll be with us. Come
Amar,
on.
yes or no?
I'm not a supporter of Hillary Clinton,
Come
so
on, Amar.
I don't think that I will.
Okay.
We'll
And up
talk
next,
privately.
tonight on Hannity.
If this Congress and the next president do not take an action to secure this border with Mexico and enforce the immigration laws, every county in America will become a border county.
A dire warning from a sheriff in Maryland. He joins us next, along with A.J. Delgado and Bo Dietl. And you'll also hear from a mother who lost her son to an illegal immigrant who killed her son and tortured him first. Straight ahead.
This has nothing to do with people in this country that came here through the front door. This has everything to do with people who snuck in this country and continue to take from America, including our children. And you talked about fear, you know, that illegals are afraid to come out of the shadows. You know, do you want to know what fear is? You know, when somebody reaches in your house and grabs your littlest kid and tortures them, you're afraid of everything for a long time.
Heartbreaking testimony on Capitol Hill yesterday from Laura Wilkerson. Her son Joshua was brutally murdered and tortured by an illegal immigrant. Now, she delivered a very stern warning against sanctuary cities and illegal immigration. Joining us now with reaction is someone who testified alongside Miss Wilkerson. That's Maryland Sheriff Chuck Jenkins. Also with us is conservative columnist A.J. Delgado, former NYPD Detective Bo Dietl. Sheriff, you made a very powerful statement, and you said every city is going to be a border city. What did you mean by that?
Well, Sean, what I meant was I've been to the border. I saw the impact of illegal immigration on the border counties. So I truly believe that if we do not seal the border, build the wall, start to enforce the laws the way they're written, every county will become a border county.
And AJ, you know, this has become such a big issue in the campaign. No mother. I interviewed this woman yesterday. My heart goes out to her. Her son tortured and murdered by illegal immigrants. We're doing nothing to secure the border, and no mother should have to go through this. Why is there not the political will up to this point to solve that problem?
You know, it's hard to hear her testimony, Sean, without getting emotional. When you think about it, really, because of illegal immigration, Josh Wilkerson never got to go to his prom. He's never going to go to a baseball game again. He's never going to walk down the aisle. His life ended because of illegal immigration. And I blame all of us, because we're all to blame for not standing up to our politicians and saying enough already. Enough of this illegal immigration for your cheap labor or your political correctness. When are we finally going to stand up for the Josh Wilkersons, for the Kate Steinleys in San Francisco, and say enough already? Our children, American children, deserve to be safe. And there's just this pressure of the political correctness of it that you just can't say that. But people are dying. People are being victimized. It cannot continue.
You know, Sean, with these sanctuary cities, you know, this is something that's happened around. There's an epidemic of rapes.
Those cities are openly defying the law of the land.
Right, and they're not turning them over to ISIS when they're arrested. You got guys who are 4 or 5 times arrested. You know, there's an epidemic going on, and the sheriff will verify this. If you look at statistics of rapes across this country, young girls under 14 years old that are being raped by these punks and these gang members across this country, if we don't do something, this is a real epidemic. And then when you capture them, then all of a sudden you turn them over and they let them go. Then, like I told you on your show the other night, night. If they said they've been here since 2014, they let them go.
Yeah.
This is so ridiculous. And this stands out right now. Why? Look, I don't care if you like Trump or not Trump, but I will guarantee you, I know him 35 years, we will stop sanctuary cities. We will stop this immigration. We will build the wall. And America needs you. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to understand we are being raped in this country by illegal aliens, and our kids are at victims.
Sheriff, I sat through a briefing with Governor Perry at the time at the border. 642,000 crimes, including rapes and murders, against Texans in an 8-year period. This is no small amount of crime we're talking about.
No, it's not, Sean, and each and every one of these crimes is avoidable. If we have taken actions as far as enforcement, at least creating a wall at the border, some sort of enforcement effort at the very highest levels, all this is unavoidable. Just in Frederick County in 2014, we had 8 cases where rapes occurred, victims between the ages of 5 and 12 by people in my county illegally.
AJ, if you look at the polls, it seems like America has come around to Trump's position. How big an issue in the campaign?
It's the biggest issue in the campaign. I think the American public's finally realizing that's why you've seen this huge amount of support for Donald Trump, and it's only growing. I think no matter what your background or even political philosophy, the facts are what they are, and the American people deserve to be safe. Let's stop bickering. Let's unite behind the idea of the wall and enforcing our laws. That's it.
All right, and coming up, we have a very important question of the day. We need your help. That's next, straight ahead. All right, time for our question of the day. So, do you agree with the people of Wisconsin and New York that the candidate with the most delegates should win the GOP nomination? We want to know what you think. Go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, @Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. That's all the time we have left this evening. As always, thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Welcome to Hannity 2016. Republican frontrunner Donald Trump will join us in just a moment. But first, the death of a music icon, legendary musician Prince. He passed away today at the age of 57. Here's the very latest from the Fox News Channel.
This is a Fox News alert. I'm Mike Tobin in Chanhassen, Minnesota, just southwest of Minneapolis, at the Paisley Park compound, where people are now streaming in to pay their respects. You see the makeshift memorial forming, people laying down flowers, purple balloons, as Prince Rogers Nelson joins that sad list of brilliant musicians gone suddenly, gone too soon. We learned this morning from the county sheriff that he was found in an elevator on this property, unresponsive. Efforts to perform CPR were quickly determined to be futile, and late this evening we got a bombshell from the website TMZ that the emergency stop Prince's plane made in the Quad Cities of Illinois was not, as originally reported, a stop for a bad case of the flu, but according to TMZ, it was for a drug overdose, and that the safe shot, if you will, a drug called Narcan, was administered to bring Prince back from the dead, and that was 6 days ago. I want to bring in Dr. Michael Baden, forensic pathologist, to ask questions about that. Dr. Baden, thank you for joining us this evening. And my first question to you, as we look at this scenario of a drug overdose, it certainly seems to be more probable than someone making an emergency stop for the flu just an hour away from their destination. Your reaction?
Mike, I think what you're saying is true, but I think it's premature to be assigning a cause of death to Prince before the autopsy is done tomorrow. By the time the autopsy is finished, by early afternoon, we will know, the doctors will know, whether he had a lung disease, whether he had heart disease, whether there was any natural cause of death. If there isn't, they're going to have to wait for the toxicology, and that may take a few days till early next week before we can be certain whether or not drugs are involved in the death.
All right, and we do know that the medical examiner has received the body, and as you mentioned, the medical examination will take place tomorrow.
Right.
And as you stated there, the toxicology reports could take several days. Now, as far as what happened with Prince in the days that followed that emergency stop in Illinois, he seemed to be back on his feet, attending parties. Is that consistent with someone who had the flu so seriously it could take his life?
Probably not. And it could be consistent with somebody who's taken a drug overdose on Friday, gets the Narcan and comes within 24 hours, gets over the drug overdose, goes about doing his regular work, and then takes another drug within 12 hours before, or earlier, before he was found dead. Now, the problem...
Got it. And I've got to wrap you, Dr. Bodden, because we're coming up against a hard break here, but people are mourning the loss of Prince Rogers Nelson here in Minnesota.
Earlier today, the RNC Rules Committee decided not to make any changes to the guidelines for the Republican convention. Here now with reaction, 2016 Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, good to see you.
Hi, Sean.
All right, I think the final number was, what, 91, 92 delegates out of New York? That's almost a complete sweep.
Yeah, we got most of them, almost every one of them. We really had a big one, and we were over 61%. It was an amazing evening in New York. It's nice, Sean, when the people that know you best really like you. So that tells you something. So we had a great evening.
Let's talk a little bit about the Rules Committee. They decided to weigh in by not weighing in. We'll have some experts and people that were in that meeting coming up later in the program today. Is that a good thing from your perspective?
Well, I think they had to do that. I think they were looking to make changes. There's been so much of a problem between Colorado and Louisiana and Wyoming and, you know, all the different places. I won Louisiana, got less delegates than people that lost. And it's ridiculous, or that a specific person who lost who has absolutely no chance of winning anyway. And then you look at Colorado and Wyoming, where the people never got to vote. And in the case of Colorado, and probably both, the people wanted to vote and they never got a chance to vote. It was given out by the bosses. So that's no way to run a democracy, and it's no way to run an election, that I can tell you.
I had Reince Priebus on my radio show earlier today, and I've been asking questions about, for example, if there was a contested convention, second ballots, how people go about courting delegates. I want you to listen to this question and answer and give me your reaction.
Let's say that you can't get to 1237, but you think you can win on a second or third ballot, and you and your team are courting the delegates. Hey, all right, after the first ballot, when you're free, we want you to vote for us. What are they allowed legally to offer those people? Can they offer them hotel rooms? Can they offer plane rides? Can they offer expensive dinners?
I know that the lawyers on all of these campaigns are looking at that, and I think in the past it's been a pretty big free for all. But I don't think you can give money, and the FEC has rules.
But you can't give money, but you could pay for their plane ticket to the convention.
I'm not sure about that. The FEC has regulations on all of those things.
Now, I've checked with my sources. You can offer plane tickets. You can offer hotel rooms. You can take delegates out to expensive dinners. That's troubling to me. I don't know if you knew that before now. Your reaction?
Well, I did know it, and it's troubling. Not only troubling, it should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to do it. I mean, you know, in theory, you could take somebody who never comes in first place. As an example with Cruz, I'm winning by millions of votes. You know that. I'm also 300 delegates up, but I'm winning by millions and millions of votes. And we're fighting for delegates, and what they're doing is take a look. I mean, they're traveling them around. They're taking them out to dinner. You could actually take a couple of $100 million and buy an election and never win a race, because all you have to do is, you know, take them out to dinner and send them to Paris, France for the evening.
Yeah.
So I would say, honestly, I think it's a disgrace. And that we should not be, this is not our system, and this should not be the Republican Party. And I'm so proud of myself you know, I exposed this. This was going on for a long time, and it's now been exposed, and it shouldn't be allowed to be. You have people that are millions of votes down, and they're buying delegates. That should not be allowed.
The AP has now said in an article that Senator Cruz is mathematically incapable of reaching 1237. The only way he could win would be on a second or third ballot. When John Kasich got to that point in the campaign, this is what he said.
John Kasich is a good man. He's an honorable man. but he has no path to the nomination. It's mathematically impossible for John Kasich to become the Republican nominee. He needs more than 100% of the remaining delegates. And it's worth remembering, Kasich went 0 for 27, lost 27 states in a row. Then he won his home state. You can't lose every state and expect to be the nominee. Right now, Kasich's role is really being a spoiler.
What is your reaction? Do you have a problem with both men? They can't get to 1237 before the convention, but they can fight for a contested convention and try to fight to prevent you from getting to 1237. What is your reaction?
Well, honestly, Sean, they should both drop out. I mean, Cruz has no path. He's mathematically eliminated. He's out. And they should both drop out. And remember this, while I'm hundreds of delegates, almost 300 delegates ahead and millions of votes ahead, it's really unfair because I wasn't competing against one person. I was competing against 16 people at the beginning. So we'd have splits with 16 people and then 14 people and 12 people and 8 people and 9 people. And, you know, it would go on that way. And then even now we have 3 people. You know, we should be having like just one. And I don't really care, and we're winning by a lot, but it really isn't fair because when you break it up, when you have that many people, you're getting much less. As an example, Marco Rubio has more delegates right now than Kasich. And those are delegates that are taken out of play, so it makes it hard for me to get him, and he's right now not in play. So the point is, the whole system is rigged. It's a phony, crooked system where people are allowed to buy delegates, are allowed to buy hotel rooms for them and take them out to dinner and do whatever they have to do to get their vote. That's not democracy.
But it's interesting, but in spite of that, your campaign had an internal memo, somehow made it into the press, that you believe you could get as many as 1,400 delegates. Paul Manafort...
Yeah, we think we can.
Paul Manafort, who works for the campaign, actually said that you will be running a more traditional campaign, that you will raise money for other candidates in the RNC, and you have also laid out a series of speeches that you will be giving, policy speeches on specific issues with a lot of detail. Can you tell us what the changes are moving forward?
Well, it's all true. What he said is all true. We will be doing a lot of policy. We will be helping other members of the party, generally speaking, other members of the party. And one thing that's very important is we have to unify the party because we're going to beat Hillary Clinton. I think I'm going to win New York, actually. And, you know, if I win New York,
it's game over.
No Republican will even campaign. It's game over. No Republican other than me will even campaign in New York. They won't waste one day there because they can't win. Look at Cruz. I mean, he came in third to Kasich. And nobody understands how that's even possible. But you just take a look. He cannot get anything in a lot of these states.
Did you know that you only spend 13 cents per vote in New York, and Bernie Sanders spent $9? That was pretty interesting. But we got to take a break. We have a few more questions, more with Donald Trump as we continue, and coming up tonight as well.
I am not going to be responding to all the crazy stuff he says.
All right, Hillary Clinton refuses to respond to Donald Trump's criticism and his new nickname. Well, that's the least of her problems because Bernie Sanders supporters don't seem to like her very much. We'll explain. We'll get reaction from Donald Trump later. James Comey says the FBI investigation into the Clinton server scandal may not be done before the Democratic convention. Jay Sekulow, Monica Crowley, and more tonight on Hannity.
Bad decisions. You know what Bernie Sanders said about her twice. You know that. Number one, he said she wasn't qualified. That's tough. I mean, that's tough. But he said bad judgment.
Okay, there's the first attack.
You think so? You know, George, I am not going to be responding to all the crazy stuff he says.
Well, I bet you will be. Anyway, that was Hillary this morning talking about Donald Trump to, of course, a Clinton sycophant, George Stephanopoulos, trying to brush off criticism. We continue with 2016 Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. Finally, he came up with the nickname, Crooked Hillary?
Well, it's just a name I've been using because it's pretty descriptive. But it is true what Bernie said. I mean, it's bad judgment. You look at her votes. You look at what she's done. You look at some of her decisions on so many. You look at the migration. That's really caused by a lot of her bad decisions. You take a look at just about anything, many of the things having to do with the Middle East. You look at Iraq, where she voted yes for the war. So she does have bad judgment, and I think she has very bad judgment, frankly. Now, Bernie also said she's not qualified. I guess she's qualified, certainly, but her judgment is very bad. Look at what happened in Benghazi. Look at the fact that she takes that phony ad about 3 minutes, 3 o'clock in the morning. And, well, guess what? She wasn't there to answer the phone. So I think that she's a very flawed candidate.
Let me ask, I know there's a huge issue in North Carolina, and it's the so-called bathroom law. And a lot of people have made, I don't know how many people this actually impacts. My guess it's a very small number, but it's become controversial. And Ted Cruz tried to attack you on this today. And so I wanted to give you a chance to explain your position on that as it relates to transgenders picking which bathroom they want to go to. I can't even believe I'm asking the question, but I'm asking.
Well, it is a small number, but we have to take care of everybody, frankly. And North Carolina, which is a great place, which I won, by the way. I love North Carolina. And they have a law, and it's a law that, unfortunately is causing them some problems. And I fully understand if they want to go through, but they are losing business, and they are having a lot of people come out against. With me, I look at it differently. A community, whether it's North Carolina or local communities, really, they should be involved. We have so many big issues to be thinking about, Sean. We have ISIS to worry about. We have bringing trade back. We have rebuilding our military. But I think that local communities and states should make the decision. And I feel very strongly about that. The federal government should not be involved.
In other words, let the state decide, let local community decide, kind of like your position on education, give it back to the states.
Yeah, let them decide. Absolutely.
I have asked you many times about your tax plan. You were asked that question this morning about raising taxes on the wealthy.
Right.
You had said you want to lower taxes for everybody. And as a matter of fact, under your plan, you talk about a lot of people paying no federal income tax. Do you want to raise taxes on the wealthy?
Well, I want to do something with the Wall Street guys, because some of these guys are making so much money, and they have carried interest provisions that I understand very well, and I've used them myself. I think they're wonderful, but I think they're unfair, and I want to get rid of carried interest and some other things. But overall, my taxes are going down big league for the middle class, big league for business, and I think ultimately everyone's going to do better because our businesses are going to generate a lot more money. We're going to really have a vital economy again, which we certainly don't have now. We have the phony unemployment rate of 5% when the number's probably into the 20s. As you know, I don't want to say it because everybody's heard me say it so many times, but you look for a job, you can't find a job, you quit looking for a job, and you're considered statistically as though you're fully employed. So, we don't have a good economy. Our jobs are being taken, they're ripped away from our country. I just left, in New York where I had the victory, upstate New York. You go to Albany and you go to Syracuse, and
I go all the time.
They're decimated up there.
Decimated.
They're decimated. It's horrible what's happening.
Horrible.
And we're going to bring our jobs back to this country, Sean. We're bringing our jobs back to this country, and companies that want to leave, they're going to have to pay the consequences. I mean, if they want to leave from Mexico and going to make product and sell it, they're going to have to pay the consequences, which in this case is going to be taxes. They're going to have to pay a tax if they want to come back into the country.
In other words, if they take their business and jobs away, they shouldn't be given financial benefits. But just to understand you correctly, you were talking about loopholes, especially on Wall Street, but not the rich in general. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, and especially on Wall Street. Sure, and I know the Wall Street guys. They make a fortune. They pay very little tax. And frankly, you have to pay some tax, and you have to pay it. And, there are so many different loopholes and so many different ways of avoiding. We want to have a lower tax. We're the highest tax country in the world. There's no country even close.
Yeah.
We're the highest tax in the world. We're going to get taxes down. But the Wall Street guys with the carried interest and stuff, we got to get rid of some. And nobody understands the system better. Really, I understand the system by far better than anybody, and they know it.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think I'm going to get so much backing from Wall Street.
Even Bernie Sanders.
The ones that are going to benefit.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders in the top
Bernie
percent.
Sanders.
He pays 14% taxes. I pay 40
Right.
federal. I need a better account. 40 federal. I pay city tax of 4% and a state tax of 10%. It's insane. But you're right. And these loopholes, some of these Wall Street guys, they pay 10 and 12%. It's insane.
Well, the death tax we want to get rid of, and if you go with Bernie, you forget it. But if you go with Hillary, taxes are going to go way up. No, I want to reduce taxes, and for the middle class, huge reduction, by far the biggest of any candidate running, and for business, likewise, big reduction.
Newt Gingrich said you are now the presumptive nominee, and he said to the establishment Republicans, they better now get used to the idea. Let me ask this question, because I think it's really relevant. you know the 17 guys that began this process with you. Who can you name people that of the 17 and others that you would like to bring in to unite the party? A lot of people are worried, concerned. It's been a contentious campaign. Will the party unite? If the party doesn't unite, Hillary Clinton becomes president. Name names. Who are people you would like to have with you, working with you?
Sure. I can tell you that Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, is a terrific guy. He endorsed me, and Chris Christie endorsed me, and he is a fantastic guy. These are two tremendous people. I'd like to have them. Frankly, Marco, I'd love to have involved. I mean, honestly, many of them, almost all of them. I'm not saying all of them, but almost all of them. The party has to unite. If we unite, this party is going to have a huge victory. Then you're going to have the House, you're going to have the Senate. The party is going to, if I'm running, I'm going to win Michigan, I'm going to win, I have a chance at winning New York. That's a tough one because, as I told you, Republicans don't even campaign in New York. I have a chance at winning it. You saw what I did. You saw what I did just a couple of days ago. New Jersey, I'm going to win New Jersey. I love New Jersey, and they like me. I mean, you look at the polls right now. We're going to win Pennsylvania. We're going to win places that other people have no chance of winning. And frankly, New York, because of the size, New Jersey, because of the size, very big. We're going to have victories that nobody else can have. I would love to see a united party. If this
you
party
get
unites,
this nomination,
we're going to have a total victory.
If you get the nomination, would you consider naming people earlier than is usual? In other words, before the election?
Well, I would, and I would like to do that, and I want to see people. There are certain people, frankly, people that were on the stage with me that are excellent people, and they didn't make it quite. Some did a really good job. And you know, Ben Carson did a fantastic job, and so did Chris Christie, and so did Marco, and so did numerous other of the people. And I got to know them all. And, you know, it's a little bit tough because we're warring against each other. But I'll tell you the other ones I'm going to name very soon. I'm going to name 10 or 12 judges that I would recommend to put on the Supreme Court, and I'm going to name them up front, and I'm only going to take the judges out of that pool of judges. So, because I want people to understand that I want the values in terms of the Republican Party and the conservatives. I want judges that they're going to be happy with. And I'm going to actually name 10 or 12 judges up front, and that would be a pool of which I will take and only take from that.
And that would be people like Scalia and Thomas.
And we'll see what happens.
You've told me people like Scalia and Thomas, but I know you got a big crowd.
Two wonderful names.
All right, I know you got a big crowd there. Mr. Trump, thank you. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And coming up, Hillary Clinton should be terrified. Why? The FBI Director James Comey says the Democratic National Convention is not the cutoff date for the investigation into a private server scandal. Jay Sekulow, Monica Crowley are here to weigh in. And then later, more reaction to the RNC Rules Committee. Randy Evans was in the room earlier today. Will tell us exactly what happened. We'll have more on Reince Priebus's comments to me. Well, can you give delegates hotel rooms and plane fare and big expensive dinners? Is that right? We'll talk about it straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. So Hillary Clinton and her campaign, well, they should be very worried tonight. The FBI Director James Comey was asked about the ongoing investigation into a private email server earlier today, and here's what he said.
Somebody asked me in the States about whether I think the question was, is the Democratic National Convention I forget what the question was, a hard stop for you, or is that a key date for you? Are you doing this investigation aimed at... And I said, no. Right? We aspire to do all our investigations in two ways, well and promptly. I'm personally close to this investigation because I want to ensure that we have the resources, the people, the technology, and the space to do those things, and to do it in the way I hope we do all our work, which is competently, honestly, and independently. And I'm confident that it's being done that way.
Here with reaction, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, Fox News contributor, Monica Crowley. Both have been following this story closely. Jay, timing matters here. I mean, is there a possibility that there's a criminal referral, but it won't be made till after the Democratic Convention? That would put our entire political system in a state of flux, right?
And I think that was the signal, actually, from Director Comey. I think what Jim Comey was saying is they're taking the evidence where it leads them. They will put together, if there's in fact a case to be made, they're going to put together the case. You mentioned it, Sean. It's called a criminal reference letter. That is the FBI agents in cooperation with lawyers will put together a case. They will then take that case over to the Department of Justice, and the determination will be made if, in fact, a prima facie case has been shown that there's been a violation of the criminal law. We've talked before about those various allegations, but I think what James Comey is signaling pretty clearly there is he's going where the evidence lead. He said he was closely involved in the case, closely monitoring it. He's a man with a lot of integrity, and I suspect he's going to go where the evidence goes.
Apparently, we've read reports that they already were able to recover the deleted emails, or at least the vast majority of them. We're told that they finished that aspect of the investigation and then moved forward into the Clinton Foundation and whether or not there was a quid pro quo during her tenure as Secretary of State. So it seems to me there's got to be some sense of urgency here, considering she is likely to be the Democratic presidential nominee.
Well, I think she's certainly the presumptive nominee. And here's what's going on, though, Sean. These are complex matters, and you and I have talked about this one, and that is the most significant issue still. More significant than the Clinton Foundation, more significant probably than what was in these emails. Of course, it was disclosures that could be very damaging, alleged to be very damaging to the United States national security. But it's the location of those servers. So that whole case has to be put together. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of lawyers on this. There's a lot of FBI agents on this. They're going through this, I think, in a thorough manner. The question is, what James Comey is saying, he is not going to be governed by a political clock. Now, this is where the differential is. And, Sean, this is, I think, the key part. There may well be a legal case of a violation of the criminal laws against maybe the Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, it may be your aides. We don't know that evidence. The FBI does. The question then becomes a political one. Will the Attorney General authorize the indictment? And that means the Attorney General, of course, is part of the executive branch. That reports to the President of the United States. And will the President allow an indictment, maybe post-convention, against the then Democratic nominee for President? That's a very tall order.
Monica, thoughts? You've been following this closely.
Yeah, for the rest of us, the political calendar does show a lot of pressure, because once she is nominated, then it would look like a coup d'etat if she were to be stripped of that and removed somehow because of an indictment and political pressure coming from that. So the rest of us look at the political calendar and see time rushing down upon this investigation and on her. But what the director is saying is, we're not going to be pressured. We are an independent law enforcement agency, and we're not watching the clock. But the reality is that the clock is extremely important. And Sean, when you asked why it's taking so long, we do know that this investigation is running on multiple tracks. The classified material and the possible mishandling of it is one track. That's what everybody has been talking about. But the other track is far bigger and more important, and that is the Clinton Foundation track. My understanding is that's why this investigation is taking so long, because they have far more agents on this case, at least this is what my understanding is, than what we've been led to believe, and it may involve foreign countries, foreign entities, all kinds of complex transactions globally that we are not aware of yet. And remember that if that in fact is the case, there are other people involved in the Clinton Foundation beyond Mrs. Clinton that might make her not the only target. And by that I mean the former President of the United States, Bill Clinton, their daughter Chelsea, and others who have been deeply involved in the foundation. They might be in the crosshairs of the FBI as well. And if that is the case, and we don't know, but if that is the case, it is no wonder that the FBI is taking so long.
Wow. The fact that we can have a criminal referral against a Democratic candidate for president, it takes your breath away. It would throw this country into a political firestorm that we haven't seen since Watergate. Guys, thank you. Appreciate it. And coming up, we're going to take you inside today's RNC Rules Committee meeting. Randy Evans, he was in the room. He'll explain what went down. And then later, the 28 secret pages of the 9/11 congressional report. Why don't they show you, the American people? It's now under scrutiny, so that they show a possible Saudi Arabian connection to the 9/11 terror attacks. Should they be released to we the people? That and more straight ahead tonight.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Mike Tobin in Chanhassen, Minnesota, where people are pouring into the Paisley Park compound here, a home and recording studio to the artist everyone knew as Prince. They're dropping off flowers, purple balloons. I want to take you now to live aerial pictures of a spontaneous block party that has sprung up downtown Minneapolis at the First Avenue Club. You may recognize that club because Prince made it famous in his movie Purple Rain. People celebrating the life and the music, and of course expressing expressing their sadness at this life that suddenly ended at 57 years old. We learned this morning through the County Sheriff's Department that Prince was found in an elevator here in the Paisley Park compound. Unresponsive. Efforts to perform CPR and revive him were quickly determined to be futile. Late this evening, a bombshell through the website TMZ, and that bombshell being information that an emergency stop made by Prince's private plane 6 days ago in the Quad Cities of Illinois was not for the flu as originally reported through Prince's handlers, but was in fact for a drug overdose. TMZ reporting that the life-saving drug Narcan was administered at the time. The effects of Narcan are to block opiates, which would otherwise depress breathing and kill the person who was using the drugs. I want to bring in forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Bodden. Now, we talked with you a half an hour ago, Dr. Bodden, and you seem to believe that it's too early to jump to the conclusion of a drug overdose. Please explain.
Yes, because we can't say it's a drug overdose till it's found in his body in sufficient amounts to cause death. And that'll take a number of days. Now, tomorrow, after the autopsies, Mike, they will know whether he had heart disease or lung disease that could have caused death. And they can rule that out or rule it in. But we have to wait for the toxicology results, which really should be ready the early part of next week, and to determine if it's a drug overdose.
Well, explain to me a scenario in which an apparently healthy 57-year-old, a guy who by rock star standards had the reputation for being clean, how he would suddenly die, and in transit. He didn't die in his bed, he died in the elevator, apparently going from one location to the next.
Yeah, well, part of it is when you get to be a superstar like Prince or Elvis Presley or John Belushi, often the people around them, the handlers, are not able to deal with drug abuse and force them into treatment. They're too big to go into treatment, and that's a problem. It's almost death by entourage. And they would have known that he was abusing drugs. They knew what happened when he went in on
Dr.
Friday.
Bodden, once again, we're running out of time, Dr. Bodden, and I want to thank you for your contribution here. This has been a Fox News Alert. Back to Hannity.
And welcome back to Hannity. So earlier today at the highly anticipated RNC meeting, well, the Rules Committee decided not to change the convention rules. Now, according to reports, committee members feared that changing any of the rules would make it seem like they were trying to sway the nominating process. Well, someone joining us right now was in that meeting. Chairman of the Republican National Lawyers Association, member of the RNC Rules Committee, Randy Evans, and from the Hoover Institute, Hannity Chen is with us. All right, Randy, you've been on the Rules Committee for how long now?
For 3 years.
Okay, so they didn't want to make changes because of appearances?
Well, for 3 reasons, really. First, we didn't want to make changes in the middle of the game. We're in the 7th inning. Why would you change the rules for the last 2 innings of the game?
Yeah.
Second, because of the cynicism, the idea that no matter what we changed, I remember one colleague, Sean, said, if we change a semicolon to a comma, one of the 3 candidates will think that is directed toward them and that we're trying to make it more difficult for one candidate over the other. And the final one was really unintended consequences. If we had gone to Robert's Rules of Order, each of the 2,472 delegates could raise a point of order. If somebody wanted to run out the clock, in other words, make it through the whole 4 days that we end up without a nominee so that we have to then come back with all the delegates unbound, that would be the technique to do it, which is to have Robert's Rules so that everybody could raise a point of order. With those kind of consequences at stake, the decision was made, let's just leave things the way they are. We played this much of the game under these rules. Let's finish the game under these rules.
I mean, the idea that every delegate would have time and be able to filibuster and come away 4 days later without a vote or a candidate would be absurd to me. And I assume that's why you kept the House rules, which I think was the right thing to do. Okay. Lonnie, let me ask you, explain the next part of this process. So we're going to have candidates that have delegates that'll sit on the next Rules Committee, but that happens before the convention. Explain what happens there.
Yeah, Sean, in the week before the convention, traditionally several different committees have met at the Republican National Convention, and one of those committees is going to be the Convention Rules Committee, and their job is going to be to determine the rules that will govern that convention as well as the Republican Party for the next 4 years. So back in 2012, when I worked with Governor Romney's campaign, we put in place a whole set of rules for that convention in Tampa that have also now been the rules of the party for the last several years. So one of the things to note is that formal changes to the rules have to be adopted by that body, by that Convention Rules Committee, which will convene in Cleveland the week before the actual convention begins.
All right, Randy, back to you. A lot of prominent Republicans, John Boehner's one of them. Anybody can be nominated on the convention floor. Karl Rove, new faces. John Kasich's entire strategy seems to be that Rule 40B doesn't apply in this particular convention. Other people, Mitt Romney, go on straight on down the list. A lot of Mitch McConnell suggested it this week. Is there any scenario under which the, quote, white knight candidate can come up on a third or fourth round of balloting, maybe somebody that didn't even run this time?
Well, the consensus is no. The consensus is that Rule 40B, which requires that a majority of the delegation of 8 states support a person in order for their name to be put in nomination, will remain a part of the rules package. And then there's this other rule, which you never hear about, Sean. It's called Rule 40E. And it says that once we start the balloting, we keep voting until one candidate gets 1237. So if you're not in nomination by the time we start the balloting, by the time we start counting the votes, then you're not going to get added later. Yeah. Now, it is important to note that there is a provision in the rules that permits the rules to be suspended. A motion to suspend the rules is always in order at the National Convention. Now, if somebody moved to suspend the rules and that passed by a majority vote, and that, in fact, we then suspended the rules to permit more nominations, it's possible. But the reason I don't believe that will ever happen is between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. They will control 2/3 of the delegates on the floor.
At
now,
least,
if you're
right?
those 2/3, you're not going to agree to change that rule.
Yeah.
And so they won't have the votes to change the rule.
All right. Look, I had Reince Priebus on my radio show, Randy, and I asked a lot of questions, for example, in Georgia this weekend. Delegates committed in the first round of balloting, in this case, a state that Donald Trump won, but Ted Cruz courting the delegates. This was a question I asked him this week that seemed to make a lot of news. And I asked him, what can be offered to the delegates? Here's his answer.
Let's say that you can't get to 1237, but you think you can win on a second or third ballot, and you and your team are courting the delegates. Hey, all right, after the first ballot, when you're free, we want you to vote for us. What are they allowed legally to offer those people? Can they offer them hotel rooms? Can they offer plane rides? Can they offer expensive dinners?
I know that the lawyers on all of these campaigns are looking at that, and I think in the past it's been a pretty big free for all. But I don't think you can give money, and the FEC has rules.
Right, but you can't give money, but you could pay for their plane ticket to the convention.
I'm not sure about that. The FEC has regulations on all of those things.
Randy, can they pay for expensive dinners, hotel rooms, plane fare?
Yes, they can. The federal election rule has one sentence that really deals with this issue, and what it says is basically you can't take money from corporations, from foreign nationals, all of the other limitations on the sources of funds. But as far as the amount of funds, as far as what you can give or take, there is no boundary. There's only one hard, fast boundary, however, and that is there cannot be a quid pro quo. There can't be a moment where a candidate or a campaign says to a delegate, right, I will give you a boat ride if you promise to vote for me.
But that's
a quid pro quo. Now, that's off limits. That's a good way to end up with an orange suit. But an expensive dinner with expensive wine, a hotel room upgraded to the Four Seasons, I don't know. That might have some sway on me. I don't know. Guys, thank you both. Appreciate it. And coming up, growing divide over whether or not the Obama administration, get this, should release. Why have they kept secret 28 pages that could show the Saudis literally are connected to the 9/11 terror attacks? We're going to explain that. We'll have reaction when we come back. Straight ahead.
And welcome back to Hannity. Remember, following the catastrophic 9/11 terror attacks, well, Congress launched an investigation to determine who was responsible for the devastation. Now, a political battle is being waged over 28 classified pages, which has never been released to you, the public, and it appears those documents show an alleged link between 9/11 and Saudi Arabia. Now, recently, the debate over whether or not to release the 28 pages has resurfaced because family members of the 9/11 victims have said they want to sue Saudi Arabia and the government for their potential involvement in the terror attacks. Here with reaction from the Islamic House of Wisdom, Imam Muhammad Ali Alahi and former NYPD Detective Bo Dietl. Imam, apparently, and I've spoken to people that have seen the 28 pages, it implicates Saudi Arabia as aiding and abetting and financing the terrorists involved in the attack against our country. Don't you think those families have a right to sue Saudi Arabia for their involvement? Don't you think the American people should have a right to know if the Saudis were involved in aiding and abetting in that attack?
Yes, they do, of course. It is about truth. It is about justice. It is about the suffering of 3,000 families of the victims. And at the same time, Sean, I think this is a gift for Islam and American Muslims in this country. That is the classification of those 28 pages is a gift for us. So people who are brainwashed under the forces of Islamophobia, they realize that Islam and Muslim and even the Saudi people have nothing to do with the corrupt the corrupt kingdom whose money and military and media and cult tribal theology have been tools of terrorism and tension.
Are you saying this as somebody who's against Sunni Muslims, as a Shiite Muslim?
It has nothing to do with Shia Muslim or Sunni Muslim.
Well, what are you? What are you?
The Saudi Arabia, as a matter of fact, I believe that those pages should be
I asked you a question. Are you Sunni or Shia?
I'm a Shia, but I don't believe that there is any major differences between Shia and Sunni.
Will you say the same thing about the Iranians that are the #1 state sponsor of terror?
Well, if Iranian had anything to do with 9/11, I would say the same thing. That,
but they are the #1 state sponsor of terror. They killed Americans in Iraq.
That stupid decision that charging Iran for the victims of 9/11,
Here's the bottom line.
That was total insanity. And I think, Shan, to say that those pages are secret or sensitive or may harm our relationship with Saudi Arabia, that is not an answer for the families of 9/11.
Bo Dietl, let me go, because the issue here is, why did our government keep this secret? We have a right to know. The Saudis, apparently, according to people that I've spoken to and watching the 60 Minutes piece on this, why not release it? Why not allow the American people to know the truth and families to get at least the compensation at a minimum that they deserve in light of the murder?
I watched that 60 Minutes piece also. The United States congressman speaking there. And the reality were 15 of the 9/11 people that flew those planes were from Saudi Arabia. There is financing done from Saudi Arabia.
In New York and Los Angeles.
Connection to that. Also the fact that the way they worded it, that the upper echelon of the Saudi government didn't know. But the point is right now, America should know what the heck is in there.
It is time for the American people to know the truth. When we come back, we need your help. Our very important question of the day, straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. Time for tonight's question of the day. So, do you think, as I do, the 28 secret pages the government has been hiding from us related to 9/11 and Saudi Arabia should be made public? Yeah, we have a right to know. Go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, @Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.